And that's something they talked about in the book as well. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
will you know what you like and what you don't like if you just abstain completely? I think
Yeah.
it's unrealistic. Like, I'm supposed to be this virginal woman and then I get married and I'm now like a sex pot. Like, what sense does that make?
Welcome to
We grown?
Question mark.
I'm Shaun.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Moyo.
And first things first, what had you feeling grown?
What's had me feeling grown has just been being overwhelmed, honestly. Like, as an adult, you're responsible for so much. Like, being higher up in your job, like, people are depending on you for answers. People are coming to you for direction. And, you have to be the person that steps up and provides that. At home, you have to be the one that, makes the calls to get things done or get things repaired, that sets up appointments. Like, it's overwhelming when you think about all of that at once, and then, you're still trying to figure out life, what you want out of life, and out of a season. I think
Yeah.
for me, I just been feeling very overwhelmed, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, adulthood. Like, I can't just be like, mommy, can you handle this? Can you do this? Or, like, have somebody else do it for me, or expect somebody else to do it for me
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I'm an adult. And it's just like, why did y'all let me do this?
No, I
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that. Because I feel like in the 20s, you get to like experience life and you get to try stuff out and
Mhm.
let me try this, let me dibble dabble in this. But by the time you get to your 30s, you got to have it like kind of together.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's just an expectation, but I feel like many people are in their 30s, and it's not like it's a right way or a wrong way, but
Yeah.
like, you have your car, you have your house, you have your family. So then it's like so many moving pieces, and it
Mhm.
gets to be a lot.
Yeah.
So then just like balancing everything,
Yeah.
and dealing with it
Yeah.
can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I don't know that we have to have it all together. I
No.
mean, we're not that old yet. Like, we're in our early 30s, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that there's still a lot of mistakes that we have to make before people are like, girl,
Yeah.
you didn't figure this out yet. Like, even with buying cars or buying your house, like, there were lots of mistakes that I
Mhm.
made in that process that I'm like, okay, noted. If
Right.
someone asks me, I will know how to respond. Or, okay, how do I get better rates on things? Like, just still things that I didn't do in my 20s because it wasn't needed. I was having fun and I was doing
Right.
whatever.
Mhm.
But I'm still learning. So I feel like, don't stress yourself. Don't let
Mhm.
things stress you. And that's one thing I've been saying at work too.
Yeah.
Even with my new manager, I tell her, like, I can't have y'all stressing me out.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to do in my real life if work is stressing me out? So sometimes
Mhm.
you have to just make it a priority to not let things stress you out, and just write down. You can start your day and be like, okay, these are the things I want to accomplish. If I can get 2 out of 3 done, that's good enough for me for today. And just be like,
Right.
that is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do everything. And it'll be here tomorrow.
It
Yeah.
surely will.
I think it's just, I know for me, it's that perfectionism that gives me that sense of like, I can't make a mistake. And that's what gives you like that pressure of like, oh, well, you got to do it and you got to do it right. And then I think it also kind of highlights other things where you may be falling short, because you're hyper focusing on not making, the wrong mistake.
Yeah.
And I, like you said, it's just lessons learned, but I'm just the kind of person that's just like, if I don't have to learn the lesson, if I can get it done right the first time,
Yeah.
and there's just certain things that it's a toss up,
Mm.
but yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that daggone perfectionism.
Child.
Perfectionism
I don't have
is
that.
shame. I don't have it either because it's shame. And you can get out of my face. Nothing need to be perfect. I am a
Yeah.
big fan. I said it before. I'm a big fan of good. I'm a big fan of great. It don't got to be perfect
Yeah.
Yeah.
because that's just
fair.
holding you back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like also, especially in the work environment, a lot of times I tell people at work, like, I'm just doing what I need to do my job and I'm out of here. And they're like, no, you actually do a lot. Because to me, what I'm considering to be this is just my job, could be to someone else like, wow, you do all of these things. And you are probably doing all of these things and still feeling like it's not enough. But if you look to your right and look to your left, are they even doing what you're doing? And you're stressing yourself about doing more.
I will say,
Yeah.
you did this amazing reel the other day, and then you sent like that same reel like 4 more times, and I was like,
Yes, we
what was wrong with the first one? I couldn't
Nothing.
figure out what the issue was, and I was like, so we not posting this because you keep tweaking this little color? It's not teal anymore, now it's cerulean. And I'm like, you don't post this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't-
Yeah.
That
That's-
perfectionism gets you every time.
It does. It
Not
does.
you, but in general.
No,
yeah,
her
yeah,
too.
yeah. Definitely
too.
me. No, it's definitely me. Like, there would be a lot of stuff that I start or I create, and then I'm just like, oh, this is trash. And then I'm just like, I don't want to show anybody. Or I'll just like, oh, well, I'll share it with them. And then I'll be like, all right, well.
And we say, it's so good. And then she'll be like, oh, well, I fixed this. We didn't we said it was great the first time.
Right.
Shit was better than what I did.
And the
Yeah.
thing with sometimes with creation, it's maybe it's just because I'm a creator. You don't gotta create stuff for other people. You can create stuff for you. You don't gotta share it with other people. You can be happy with what you did,
Yeah.
and that is perfectly fine.
That's fair.
I remember I did one drawing. I mean, it was like during a depression season, and I did that drawing, and that I poured my heart and soul into it, and I was like, and save, and nobody needs to see this. And I ended up posting it like a half a year later, and then people were like, oh my goodness. I was like, oh nope. I was like, processed it, worked it out. I was like, this was during a time that I needed to process. I was like, and this was for me then, but now I want to share it with y'all, because I think it might help somebody who was going through that as well. I mean, so just know you can do something for you, and it can be for you for however long. It can be for you for now. It can be for you for forever.
Yeah.
But
That's real.
Yeah.
All right, sermon. Y'all.
Okay, we already
I
getting
know.
vulnerable as we
Right.
jump
Ooh.
into this.
Come on,
Sex
communication,
talk.
and now we getting into the next chapter.
Yes. Next chapter.
It's a podcast, it's a video, and more.
Okay.
As we continue our Marriage Be Hard guided book discussion, we are now on chapter 3, which is Sex Be Hard. I feel like this is the first time the three of us have sat down and talked about sex together.
Like this, yes.
I don't think all three of us
Oh,
have
no,
ever.
not all
Yeah,
three
no,
of
no,
us.
not all three.
No,
of us.
not all
Yes.
three of us.
Yes. So, yeah, this chapter they talked about like green flags, yellow flags, your turn-offs, turn-ons, how sex changes through each different phases of life. They talk about
communicating with sex.
Making sex a normal part of conversation and taking away some of the shame that's tied to it, even for people who are like the normal standard for sex. Like a married couple, you expect them to have sex, but do they talk about it? Would you share that with your friends? Would you share that with your family? Would you share it with your kids so that they understand what it is before they get to the situation where their friends are telling them, oh yeah, you should be doing this. How do I do it? I don't know. People do it though, and we see it on TV being done. I'm guessing this goes here, and maybe like, so then people have these awkward first interactions with sex because they don't know what to expect. And I'm saying people as myself included, like not being like, you get the talk of don't have sex until you're married, and then you get to the point of it's time to have sex, and it's like,
Now
okay,
what?
exactly.
Yeah.
Now what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
How often am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to say yes all the time? Do I get a chance to say no if I want to say no? Like, what are the rules? Are there any rules? Who makes up the rules? Like, it's so much involved in the conversation that is just not talked about. So yeah, we're gonna talk about it. So our first question is, do you have any fear as it pertains to sex? Fear or shame?
You go first.
There's some safety in like not having sex, but then you bring in the religious side of it, and it's just like it's just put on this pedestal. And so, it was just like, oh, well, you're doing like the good girl kind of like syndrome. And Melissa talks about it because she was like, it was very pervasive for her, where it's just like, I'm not going to do anything or say anything or listen or watch anything that's going to put me in a compromising like position. Um, and so I just had to work through that myself. And I got to a place where I was very sex positive. And in school, like I made a point to like get the education and become a health educator on campus, a peer health educator on campus to help other people like learn about sex, because it's such a human thing, and the media does such a terrible job of like showing us what the realities of sex is. But yeah, I think once I got married though, oddly enough, that shame kind of came back. Like the first, I guess, couple of weeks, maybe months into our marriage, it was just like I don't know, it was just weird shame. But now I ain't got no shame. Now I ain't got not an ounce. I ain't got no fear either. That's my husband. We gonna do what we do. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like originally growing up, there wasn't really. Was there a fear? I think there was a fear. Actually, I do, because I always knew I knew I was gay, so I was like, how that's gonna work? I mean, of course, you watch the videos, so you're like, oh, okay, that's how it works. Well, who gonna do what? How is that determined? And it's like, I just don't know. So that was always like a fear, in my head of like, how do you figure those kind of things out? I mean, and then, sex isn't talked about. And gay sex definitely is not talked about. So it was like, well, I can't even ask anybody if I did want to ask somebody, because who about to tell me? Like somebody about to be like, you not doing that. I'm like, who, me? Like, no. But how do you, in case, you were interested? Like, I'm just curious. And then that might have led to shame earlier. No. Nah. I think shame wise, it would just be more so like body image, where it's like I feel like I might not be able to do something because I'm like a thicker boy. Not like thick, but thick enough.
Hey, thick, 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 thick.
So then I mean, that's really just a self thing. I mean, because that's really what's the difference in like shame and guilt? Shame is like I am a bad person, and guilt is like I did a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I think that would lead to shame. Yeah. And there's a lesson on shame and guilt, if you didn't know.
Subscribe for more.
So yeah, I think shame might have been, relevant in different parts, but as you go through cycles, I think it can show up in different forms. But that being one of them.
Yeah. I think for me, I didn't have a fear of sex, but when I started having sex with my husband, it was like kind of comparing, like, do I know what I'm doing? Do I know, like, is this meeting his expectations of what sex has been for him, because he was already, out in these streets and he ain't wait for me. but yeah, so like there was that, do I know what I'm doing? Am I doing the right things? But I don't know. I feel like as we've been together, we can talk about, okay, do you like this? Do you not like this? And also, and the other thing was knowing what I liked, because I didn't know what I liked because I wasn't having sex. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to, well, actually we didn't talk about it, but the whole masturbation thing, and is it right or wrong? And there is something to say about, how do you know yourself? How do you know what you like? Or are we just having sex? I mean, what are we having sex for if it's not to feel pleasure? And if I'm not able to communicate what is pleasurable to me, then why am I even doing it? Like, I want to get something out of it the same way that someone else would want to get something out of it. So I should know, and I shouldn't expect my husband to just know, because I'm not all these other people he's been with. Something may have worked for them that doesn't work for me. I know, like, I'm super ticklish, so like some of those sensual things that people do, like,
Yeah.
I don't like that stuff. So
Better get a foot to the face.
exactly. So I'm like, please don't do that. But it's like, okay, so what can I do? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I have to actually figure that out for myself. Or how about we try X, Y, and Z? And so just figuring out our dynamic and our flow is something that's hard in the beginning to talk about, because it's like, I don't want to make it seem like what's happening isn't what I want.
Yeah. I mean, and then you feel like, well, it's my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're not enjoying this because I was this way, or I
Yeah.
did this, or
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you're doing all this to make me feel pleasure, and I don't want you to feel bad if it's not coming off that way to
Yeah.
me. So losing that shame and being like, all right, like, this is what I want, this is how I want it. Like,
Mhm.
that's the part where it's like, okay, now we're in a flow. Now it's like,
Yeah.
we can do all these little fun things, but make sure you do this thing or this thing.
Yeah.
Or if I want to change things up, make sure you're willing and able to do those things. And they talk about the green light, yellow lights, and red lights in sex, and basically those are things. The green lights are the things, yes, that's something I will always say yes to. Yellow light is the things that if I'm in the mood for, yes, but I could also say no.
Mhm.
And respecting the fact that if I say no this time, it's a no this time.
Mhm.
And maybe try again another time. And then red lights are the things that they're saying, yeah, don't do that. Never,
Yeah.
in no
Mhm.
situation should you ever do this.
Yeah.
And those things can change through different seasons. So always having that open communication to say, I said I didn't like that before, but now I do. Or that used to work for me, but it doesn't work the same
Mhm.
anymore. Or I'm not really feeling it anymore. Yeah.
Can I backtrack?
Mhm.
And I'll probably move this back. But another fear that I feel like I had was, and it's something that I feel like isn't as relevant in like heterosexual couples. I mean, or the media doesn't portray it as relevant, but like the fear of like HIV, AIDS, and all of that in gay sex, because it was always pushed, like this is, relevant in the community, and it is, but like that, figuring out like how do you move forward, how do you like find sex, like, if you're looking for sex, so like whether it's like, oh, do you meet people in person, like how does that work, how do you, like the fear of being on like apps like
Mhm.
Grinder, shoot, back in the day, like A4A, Atom for Atom, like those were like things that you had to figure out, and it's like there's no way to like know
Yeah, it's
these
not
kind of
open
things.
communication
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. I feel like I've always been an advocate of people being open to discussing your status, like your sexual history and your status, because it is very important. Like if you can be as intimate as you possibly can in this realm of like putting your body inside somebody else's body, or your body's touching like the most intimate way, then you should be open and adult enough to discuss like what your status is.
Mhm.
And it's not always an easy conversation for everybody to have. I definitely understand that. Like, and it's not the sexiest conversation.
Mhm.
But it's important. It's key. And it's considerate. It's
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, even the fear of like going out and getting tested, like even
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
like
It's
there was
nerve-wracking.
something put onto you about like, oh my goodness. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, it's just
Yeah.
it's a scary experience,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to go through, especially like you do whatever and then you're waiting like, oh shoot,
Mhm.
like I don't know. I mean, and then if things come back clear, then you're like cool. If things don't come back clear, then it's like, well, now I have to figure out what are the next steps.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. And I think it's that definitely that fear of the next steps. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I don't know. That just came out of nowhere.
No,
It-
but
it
that is a
flowed
relevant.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
it
definitely
flowed
a
well.
relevant topic. Because people don't talk about it, like you said, like unless it's a fear tactic.
Yeah.
People are using like.
And I really wanted to not go into any of these conversations, but then I just thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, I did not have these conversations, and I
Yeah.
was like, okay, maybe you should talk about it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like somebody could be out there like, well, I don't know, should I? And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, do what you do what you got to do. Like you should have no shame about it. Like
Yeah.
um you might feel bad, it's okay to feel a little guilty, but guilt passes. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
feel shame about that. Like you can go out and be who you are and figure out the stuff that you like um
Make sure
in
you're doing it
in a
safely.
safe way,
Yes,
right?
consensually.
Yes.
And consensually. That was like my favorite thing to talk about in school was
Consent is sexy.
consent. Consent is sexy
Yes.
was my whole brand.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
honestly. Um yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh, okay. On the topic of consent, it's not in the book, but or
it's
at least in
sexy.
this
It's kind
chapter.
of in there, trust and boundaries and
Yeah.
respecting those
Yes,
boundaries.
definitely boundaries. That's essentially consent is just making sure that you're clear of mind when saying yes to having sex with someone and that
Mhm.
you're communicating throughout um, because somebody can withdraw, their consent
Mhm.
at any point. And it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of people because, there's just different understandings of what, consent is. And there's different understandings of like, okay, should I stop? They're saying no. Should I go? Like I don't understand. So I think it's definitely something that people need to understand. Like there's even like different situations where somebody can't give consent properly. For example, there's a power dynamic at play. Like that's another reason why a lot of jobs require people to report if somebody is dating somebody else at work because if somebody has a higher paying position or they're like your
Mhm.
boss, like you can't properly consent to having sex with that person or even taking a drink from that person. Like you can't really properly consent to it because there's a power dynamic that could be at play, overtly or covertly. um there's also, an age difference. There could be an age gap. There could be, manipulation. There's just a lot of things that could play into it. So I think just going into things sober, clear of
Mhm.
mind, that you all agree, yes, we want to keep going. And if there's ever a reason that, you think the other person might be uncomfortable, check in. And
Mhm.
a lot of the chapters in the book are always about checking in with the other person because
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
more than just about you, it's about the other person as well. So yeah, consent is sexy.
Yeah. And it definitely still applies in marriage
Oh
because I think
yes.
in marriage
Mhm.
people feel like, well, we're married now.
Oh yeah.
Your body is
Mhm.
my body is your body. And it's not necessarily the case.
Mhm.
If I don't feel like doing something, I still should have I think the word is autonomy over my body to
Mhm.
say, not right now, or
Mhm.
I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
And your partner having to respect that no
Yeah.
matter
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. Even in the religious sense, because I've been, good God, I couldn't even count the number of like women's conferences or just church events where they may or may not talk about marriage or and relationships and sex, and like it's one of those things where it's like hinted that we all do things that we don't really want to do, but
Mm.
we want to make sure that we're helping our partner or well, let me not say partner, husband, like you're pleasing your husband, if he wants it, then you just kind of not even
Roll
suck it
over.
up, but yeah, like like just find it in your heart to do it. And it's just like, no, like
Find it in my heart.
if I don't want to have sex, I shouldn't be forced to have sex. Like, and they talk about that, like how you communicate, um that you still desire the other person but you don't want to have sex. Like how do you turn down someone, especially your husband or your wife, if you're just not in the mood or in the moment, and how you make sure that they feel reassured that they're still desired, but it's just in this moment physically I don't have it in me.
Yeah. And I think along with desire, they talk about like higher desire, lower desire.
Mm.
And Shaun and I were talking about it before we started recording. Um, and there's the idea that some higher desire people don't want to be initiators. So then it becomes difficult because there could be resentment there of, I want to have sex with you, but you don't seem to want to have sex with me. Where the
Child.
lower desire person may be saying, I mean, I would do it if you asked me to, but if you don't ask me, then
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to?
yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
something we've had to deal with, I think, because um for us, like even though we've only been married like maybe, a year and almost 6 months, um, I've had a lot of changes like mentally, emotionally, like before we got married, like I think that was like the first time I had like experienced depression in a very long time. And because we only saw each other on the weekends, like it was just different. Like I think in those moments, like sex was the medication for me. Like, just getting that boost to see him and being around him, and us enjoying each other's company. And then when we got married, they had my therapist and my psychiatrist had put me on medication. And, with the medication for that as well as ADHD, like they always say, like, oh, you may experience some changes in like your sex drive. And nobody talks about it. Nobody really tells you, like, what does that look like?
That
What
Joan
does
is the
that
fast
mean?
part on the commercial.
Yeah, like they just mention it and it's just like, okay, and we're gonna keep moving. And like nobody explained to me like what that looked like. And so my husband is high desire, and he thought I was higher desire because at first, like, it was just like, hey, on site, you know? But once I started taking the medication, it was just like it just wasn't there. And so I felt like I was getting to a point where we would just have like long periods of time. Like, granted, we are like best friends. So in my head, I'm like, oh, we're good. We're good. I'm not thinking about it because the desire is not there. And he's not pushing because he knows I'm like going through figuring out, my situation mentally and emotionally. And so it was just like, I'm not going to ask. And I'm like, all right, well, we're good. And then at one point we kind of had a conversation. And I'm like, I didn't realize that, I'm not the same person that you had the expectation of at first. And so we kind of worked on it. And, some people may not think scheduling sex is sexy, but like if that was the first step for us, that was the best step for us, And then kind of working out with my doctors as well. Like, hey, this is a problem. Like, this is not me. I'm not myself. I need help. And so whether that's, dialing back the medication or changing the medication, like that's what we had to figure out. But I think, yeah, like you do go through different situations where your drives might be different. Like that's essentially what I'm trying to say. Like your drives might be different. There are a lot of different factors that can affect it.
Yeah. And for me, having kids, you have that, I think it's like 6 weeks where they tell you you can't do anything until you heal and blah, blah, blah. But what they don't tell you is just because the 6 week mark hit, that don't mean you're ready. So I think with our first kid, we were like, oh, bet 6 weeks. Like we've been waiting so long. And then like it just was not working. And so I had to start Googling like, okay, what do I need to do to get my body back to the right place? Like I don't know if it was because I had to get stitches or like what exactly it was, but it basically seemed like, I don't know, this might be TMI, but it basically seemed like I was stitched back so tight that everything hurt like crazy. And so then we were like, okay, we're going to have to do things to kind of open me back up, which took a while. It wasn't like you do it one day and you're good. Like you have to be consistent so that your body is like, okay, we're accepting things now. Like we're not closed anymore. So yeah, and with the second kid, it was like, all right, we know what to do this time, but it still took took time to get back into it. And as a wife and I feel like I'm the higher desire. We're kind of even, but my husband, he sometimes can be like, I can go without if I feel like it. But maybe he's had practice because of the kids too. But I always feel like, well, I'm not pleasing him because I just had a baby or I am healing and I am doing this. I'm like, well, what can I do in the meantime, or what can we actually do? And he's always like, no, you don't have to do anything. And like, he's thinking about me and I'm trying to think about him. Yeah. So it's, I don't know. It's interesting because those are not conversations I've heard or even thought about. Like I didn't think about what do you do after you have a kid? I know it's 6 weeks, but 6 weeks is a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time to just be like, yeah, nothing.
Especially if y'all was regular weekly,
Yeah. Yeah.
daily.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely different, and it's definitely something that people should talk about more.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to talk about it more as it relates to pregnancy and delivery and things like that. I think, or maybe because I was searching for it.
Yeah, I was saying.
That was popping up.
Yeah.
The algorithm is in your favor. It's swinging that way.
So if you're looking for things, definitely just search, because now people are being more open and just saying, giving tips. Lubrication is your friend always. Like, that's one of the biggest tips people will say. Like, don't be ashamed if your body has changed and you are not like super soaker no more. Like, go ahead and get some help until things are back to normal, if they even ever get back to normal. Because I know for some people, they're like, oh no, I have to use it every time now. Like, it's not that I don't desire my husband or whatever, but this is just where we're at. And I've heard that even with age, like as women get older, things could change
up a little bit.
Yeah, and same thing for men. Like, at some point, they might not be able to do the things they used to do. They might not be going multiple rounds with you. Like, things are gonna change, and you have to be ready for those shifts.
Yeah.
And just figure out what works for you and your partner, so that everybody's still happy. And getting what they want.
Yeah, it's definitely that communication. Like, if you don't talk about it, then you won't know. And if you're not comfortable talking about it, then it's just going to be worse. And yeah.
Do you guys think that as we start having kids, our kids are getting older, that sex will be a normal part of conversation?
I think so for me, and for us. I would say that because we've had that conversation of like how we would go into having discussions with our kid. And I had a mom who was very much a scientist, so she was very much about explaining to me the birds and the bees and the biology of it. Despite, like even the religious aspect of it, she was just like, you're going to understand like what sex is and the biology of it. So I've always admired the fact that my mom was very open about, me understanding my body as a woman and like the changes that I'll go through, because I've heard other friends who did not have that experience, who were just like, they just started bleeding one day and they started panicking because nobody talked to them about it. So I think, even for him, like he was saying, like as a man, like I would want to tell my son, what to expect with puberty and stuff like that, so he'd understand like nothing is wrong. You're normal.
Yeah. Like nobody tell you that your nipples hurt.
What? I didn't know that.
I didn't know for them for men.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a thing. Like I swear in middle school there was like a period of time where like all the guys' nipples were hurting, and they're just like sore to the touch. Like and people will walk around like and slap you on the chest and be like, "Dang, like that hurt." But I feel like that was never anything ever mentioned ever in life.
I mean, it was a normal part of being a woman, but I didn't know that. Y'all.
Yeah, I don't know why. I still don't. I would have to Google it one day.
Yeah.
But
there's so many things that are just unspoken, and everybody just goes through it, like suffer through it like the rest of us.
Yeah, like learn how I learn, right? Nobody told me, so don't be mad at me for not telling you. And it's just like let's break that cycle.
So it's funny because John and I definitely had a conversation about this or something similar recently, because we were talking about how, like when we have kids, like how, like someone asked, like, oh well, how are you gonna tell your kids about being gay and like different kinds of families? I'm like, I feel like we have to. It was like, right, like it's never gonna be a time like they're gonna be walking around like, well, that's a lady and that's a man. Where's my lady? Like, so it's like that feels like a conversation that's going to come up naturally and frequently, and I feel like that also leads into like sex conversations as they age. Like I feel like it's just something that has to be natural. In our relationship. So I would say yes, that is the plan, to make sure that our children know and I feel like we're jumping ahead to a different chapter, but
Oh yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
they will know and they'll be able to talk to us about that. I mean, they'll also have resources. If we have a girl, then like y'all are here. Like we
Yeah.
have people that they can talk to. So
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
say that all the time. Like, if my kids don't feel comfortable for whatever reason talking to me about something, I would hope that they feel comfortable with
somebody like
somebody that I know,
yeah,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
I know that the information is not is good information,
yeah.
basically. Um yeah. And I don't know how the conversations will come up, because I feel like they didn't come up naturally in conversation for me as a child. Like, there was never a reason for me to say, so tell me about sex. Like,
Yeah.
and my parents didn't do it either. I don't There was no expectation that I was having sex. I don't know about my brothers. I feel like I've heard them say, y'all better not bring no girl in here pregnant. Like, I've heard them tell my brothers that, but nobody even had the inkling to tell me
Yeah.
anything about anything. Because I guess I wasn't doing anything, so maybe they just knew. I don't know.
I I wonder if we do have those conversations. Like I think there are gateways to the conversations. We just our parents might not have taken them. Or like hopped on the opportunity. Like I remember one time I mentioned pubic hair to my mom and then she was like like I was like, "Yeah, I got pubic hair." She was like, "Oh yeah?" And I was like,
Oh yeah.
"Yeah." And then that was it. I had like two. Like, I was like, "Faggot, like can't tell me nothing." I'm about to
Grown
shave.
man.
Right. And it was like that is something that could have like easily have been a gateway to talking about
Yeah.
puberty.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. I mean, well, not as much as it probably could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there are little tiny windows of opportunity that might present themselves to us. We just
Need to be
Yeah.
more aware of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or not just push them aside as
Yeah.
quickly as other people might have to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think my mom was, again, because she had like that biology background, she started very early. And not even in like a bad way, just like, again, we're probably jumping ahead to another chapter, but like starting out with just explaining to me like the proper names for my body parts, and letting me know like, okay, if you feel uncomfortable, you can always tell me. If
Mhm.
you feel somebody touch you in this body part, let me know, kind of thing. And like it's stuff like that, like you're helping me become aware of my body. And then like closer to, I think maybe I was in elementary school, she gave me like it was like an American Girl book.
It
Some
was like a
people might know it.
pamphlet.
It was like a cute American Girl book that kind of showed you like, okay, so you're gonna get some hair in places you didn't have hair before. Your nipples gonna hurt. That means your boobs are coming in. You're gonna be bleeding.
Dang.
your period's coming, and like it explained it in like a very a clear way and like a non-scary way. And so she used that book for me to have as a reference, but also like talk about those topics. And then I think kind of after that, she kind of just eased into like, okay, so this is birds and the bees conversation. I remember the first time she tried to have that conversation, I fell asleep. I do remember that. I remember her like, okay, I'm gonna have the birds and the bees conversation with you, and I'm like, okay. And then she started, and and I was just like, yeah, I remember that. I definitely remember that took two conversations, because the first time I was just like, all right, mom, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to sleep now. But yeah,
Yeah.
It's
I think
hilarious.
yeah. So I feel like she helped me not to have that shame around my own body, but yeah, I think it was just the lessons learned early helped me understand sexuality
Hmm.
better than I think she did, because that was one thing she noted, that when she was coming up, nobody told her anything. Like, she's like, I didn't know anything until I essentially got to college, and that's when I did all of my research and tried to find out
Yeah.
more information, because nobody told me anything. Like, growing up in a conservative church and environment, like, I didn't know, and I didn't want you to go through that. So I was like, I appreciate you, even though I kind of still followed in her path a little bit, because then I was like, okay, now that I'm in college, I'm gonna learn some more about it, and then I'm gonna talk to other people about it. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
definitely.
So you mentioned I guess, shame in your own body, like knowing yourself.
Hmm.
What are y'all thoughts on masturbation?
Do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I think, and this is even from like a religious standpoint too. Like, God didn't give you that whole reason for masturbation if he didn't want, like, he made us pleasurable beings. Like, we enjoy pleasure. All right, just lean into it. Like, how, and that's something they talked about in the book as well. Like, how
Hmm.
will you know what you like and what you don't like if you just abstain completely? I think
Yeah.
it's unrealistic. Like, I'm supposed to be this virginal woman and then I get married and I'm like a sex pot. Like, what sense does that make?
Sex
That
pot.
but that's like the expectation that people like paint. Like, one minute it's just like, don't be having sex, don't you do it, don't touch yourself either. And then you get married and they're like, y'all having the sex now? Y'all bumping uglies? Y'all doing it? Y'all pregnant yet? Like,
Yeah.
well, how am I
Yeah.
supposed to know any of this? Like, there's a whole lot of in between there. So, yeah, I say do it. I'm an advocate. Only thing I'm not necessarily an advocate for is porn, personally, because research has shown like it can be damaging. And then for me personally, I've always been aware that there is sometimes a human trafficking kind of background to that
Hmm.
as well. So for me, I'm just like, if we can abstain from porn, great. But masturbate as you will. Enjoy yourself.
Use your imagination.
Yeah, listen. Sometimes that's all you need. Like, oh, I can just imagine this little
So-
scenario going on, and then hey, go to town.
I will say that, I mean, well, I know like porn isn't necessarily healthy for anybody, but I will say that was a big part of figuring out like,
Yeah.
oh, so you might be interested in the guy versus the girl. Like, I remember in middle school, like, you put on like some anime porn, like, oh yeah, this is it. And then you're watching, and then you're like, well, that's interesting. And then you're like, well, let me try a different video. And it's like, well, that seems a little bit more interesting to me. But then at the end, it's like, but that's wrong. You go back to this. And it's like,
Mhm.
but this isn't as stimulating as that was. So I think that was a big eye opener for me at a younger age. So I am definitely, masturbation pro as well, because you got to figure out
Yeah,
your stuff,
you
Yeah.
do.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, because even like masturbating with a partner is different. Like, I mean, it's cool, it's an experience, but it's also like, I feel like you got to know what you like before you even get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you were saying, like, you don't want them get in there and it's just like, it's not you. It's not you.
Yeah.
And I
just
think
don't know if I like that.
yeah, like and it's just like they're trying their darndest, and it's just like it's okay. We're both figuring it out, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes it's easier to just do things yourself.
Listen,
Sometimes.
sometimes it's the moment strikes, and it's just like, sorry, you weren't available. we can do a redo, but I had to get mine first.
Yeah. I mean, it could also help because
Yeah, no,
there's
yeah.
no longer any pressure.
Yeah.
If I'm like, I'm happy already.
Yeah.
We could just do whatever you want to do now. Like,
Yeah.
don't worry about me.
Listen. When we were figuring stuff out, for me, like, I didn't share that with my husband originally, but like for me, that was just something I had to do to help me get there before I would get to him. And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to start. It was just like, I should start, and then I would, and I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna finish. I'm gonna finish on him. And then again, like, it's just, for me, it was a way to like at least initiate more when we were having that rough patch of like, I just didn't have the drive. Like, again, I knew what I liked. I knew what got my engines running. So I was just like, all right, let's do a little pregame.
Yeah.
And then even now, it's just be like, listen, I'm gonna rub one out, and then I'll come see you. And then we both just like, it takes the pressure off. And honestly, as somebody who, again, sex positive, sex isn't always about like having an orgasm sometimes, or a big orgasm. Let me say that. because I think it can be pleasurable even with the smaller ones. And I think, yes, definitely taking that pressure off of like, oh, I gotta make you come. Well, I mean, that's what people say. Like, I feel like taking the pressure off of that, and it's just like, all right, let's explore each other's bodies. Let's really enjoy like this moment to take our time and like see what we like and what we don't like. It's great.
I just have this image in my head, just like laying there. You can come now. Come in the room.
I'm done. I finished.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Like something that we were hesitant.
Okay.
Shaun was
it's
hesitant.
something that I was hesitant about.
I tried
I'm
to
always
make
the
it
hesitant
inclusive.
one. No, I'm always the hesitant one because I'm like,
Let's skip this.
Is a little,
Yeah.
This is a little risque.
Yeah.
I was like, I ain't trying to show y'all no nips. Like, gotta hide that junk. Y'all found out about nipples hurting in middle school. I could have
Vulnerability.
Yes.
for all men out there, I guess.
Y'all should subscribe for the fact that Shaun is out here being vulnerable with total strangers, because we know some of y'all and we don't know a lot of y'all. Okay?
Yeah.
So subscribe and like us. Share us. Yeah. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Is that it?
Yeah. We just want to normalize sex as much as possible. Normalize talking about it,
Mhm.
because there are things that you could be struggling with that other people are struggling with, and if you don't speak up,
Yeah.
everyone just feels alone. And most of the time it's not just you. Like 9 times
Yeah.
out of 10 it's not just you.
Yeah.
So yes.
Have trusted people that you can have these conversations with, but definitely your partner should be a trusted person that you originally have conversations with. Discuss everything, and don't always wait until the moment where you're in the heat of the moment to discuss things. Like,
Yeah.
make it a casual conversation. Like, I think that's what we do for the most part. It's just like, oh, would you like to try this? Do you like this? Or do you like that? Like everything, again, it doesn't have to be like the movies where it's just like, oh, we're ripping each other's clothes off and we're headed to the couch and now we're gonna make our way to the bedroom. Like, sometimes it's just like, all right, we're going to the grocery store, we're gonna have a conversation, and I ask, oh, what do you think about this? Do you like this? Funny thing about the green, red, yellow story. I asked him the other day, like, oh, I really like doing this. Are you okay with that? And he said, actually, it's actually a red. And I was like, oh, it's like one of my favorite
Noted.
things to do. But
Noted.
he's like, but I know that you enjoy doing it. So I'm like, no. If it's a hard no for you, I can let it go. And that's fine.
Is it a red though if he's been letting it happen?
No, it's not.
Oh, it has.
No, it's not okay because of the fact that he's only doing it because I just
That's
go
interesting
into it.
because when I think of a red, like, no, we're not doing this, I would never be like, I'll let you do it and not tell you.
But there's no situation where he wants it to be done.
I don't know. Okay.
All right, guys. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, do what you got to do, share, tell a friend, somebody you having sex with. Well, somebody you might want to have sex with.
Hey, share this episode with that.
Right.
Hint, hint.
Drop that hint. I can't wait, but it's okay.
Bye.
Bye.
See y'all.